Welcome to the Fantasy Football Sackos podcast with your hosts, Jason Shellcross and Alex Krogh.
Let's go! Fantasy Football Sackos. 3 weeks in the books. We got our waiver wire show lined up here early week 4. Alex, how was your weekend?
It's week 4 in this house. It's week 4 in this.
Your poor wife is stuck with that.
My weekend was terrible. In our league, I have started 3 quarterbacks. They've combined for 0 touchdowns so far. And so screw you, Carson Wentz. Screw you, Daniel Jones. And screw you, Gardner Minshew. We talked about you so well last week, and you come out and do nothing.
Yeah, I can't even throw Tannehill in your face either because he didn't have that great of a weekend.
He sucked just as much.
So that's unfortunate. Both of our waiver wire streamers did not perform well. However, I feel like
why do people listen to us? We're the worst.
I feel like every analyst was like, you know what? Go out there and stream Gardner Minshew and Ryan Tannehill this weekend. It'll go great. And then it didn't. But
next week they'll both throw 3 touchdowns.
Exactly. It'll be fun. You know who my sneaky pickup is at QB for this week? Well, really just going forward.
Nick Foles?
No. Well, no. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. The guy is lighting the world on fire.
Okay.
But how about that Bears game? Nick Foles. So this is our week 4 waiver wire show. Please subscribe, like, comment down below. Let us know who your favorite waiver wire pickup is for this week down below in the comments. Let's get into it. Let's talk some Bears because that was quite the upset here. One of my recommended pickups is Jimmy Graham, and his success had a lot to do with the change at quarterback, Nick Foles. Jimmy Graham, I mean, people are going to laugh, and he's been a bust for a couple of years now, but he caught 6 of 10 targets for 60 yards, and he was like the main he was like the first option on pass plays in the red zone, especially in the end zone. He caught 4 of 7 targets after Foles took over for Trubisky, and he had 7 targets in week 1. He's only rostered in about 13% of leagues, so he's out there everywhere pretty much. Are you excited about the change of quarterback? Do you think Foles is the real deal?
I love Mitch, man. But yeah, it was time. We were on multiple texting threads with Bears fans and just being like, if Foles was better, he would be in. And then literally you come back from commercial, he's got his helmet on. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah, it was greatly timed.
So I was very impressed by Foles. He was really throwing the ball downfield, which I think helps all of their wide receivers. Jimmy Graham has been the end zone threat so far. 3 touchdowns in 3 weeks. That's pretty good. And if they're going to go to him in the red zone, then I don't want to pat myself on the back because, well, I actually have to because pretty much everything I've said so far on this freaking podcast has been wrong. But I did mention Jimmy. I did mention Jimmy Graham as potentially somebody to keep your eye on before the season started, and I think he might be usable, especially with Foles. The Bears threw the ball they threw it over 50 times, and Foles almost had 30 passes just in a quarter and a half of play. Matt Nagy loves throwing the ball. And now that Tariq Cohen's out, it does help David Montgomery's value. I think he could be an RB1 actually the rest of the way because Foles is going to check down to him. He knows
Tariq
how
Cohen's out. Yeah. The Tariq Cohen injury there really opens that door.
Correct. Yeah. So I love David Montgomery going forward. If you can try to get him, I absolutely would. But back to Jimmy Graham, I think he's usable, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Anthony Miller looked a lot better once Foles went in the game. They talked on Good Morning Football this morning about Foles before the play that he threw the touchdown to Anthony Miller. He goes, if they all out blitz me, run to the L in the end zone. And they all out blitzed him, and he ran to the L in the end zone, and he caught the touchdown to win the game. So the legend of Nick Foles has already started in Chicago.
That's awesome.
Big Dick Nick, 9-inch Nick, whatever you want to call him, we're ready to go in Chicago. So, Jimmy Graham.
Oh, good stuff. Man. Yeah, I would just recommend Jimmy Graham basically for any of our Kittle managers out there or if anybody had Goddard, because Goddard went down too. Really, anybody.
He was a 1 week wonder. I started Goddard in a league 2 weeks in a row after week 1, expecting something out of Carson Wentz's lifeless body in Philadelphia, and it did not happen.
It didn't go well. All right. Well, that's a nice little victory lap for the Bears. Sorry, all you Atlanta Falcons fans. You guys should be used.
Falconed.
Yeah, well, I was going to say they should be used to choking by now, but I digress.
Yikes.
Let's move on to some running backs that should, in my opinion, be picked up or evaluated. First being Myles Gaskin of the Miami Dolphins. He had 22 rushing attempts. And so leading into week 3, it was always like, like the 7 spot rushing, 9 rushing attempts, and, sprinkling like 3 to 5 catches. And it's like, okay, maybe you pick him up if I want like 12 passes on, a terrible team, or 12 touches on a terrible team from probably like a mediocrely skilled player. But then he just comes out in week 3 and has 22 rushing attempts. Granted, he only turned him into 66 yards, so not a whole lot to kill yourself to go run and get this guy over. But however, what I do like is the floor from the catching in the receiving game. 5 catches for almost 30 yards against Jacksonville. I think the volume is there. He had in week 3, he outtouched his teammates by 19 carries each over Breida and Howard. And he co-led the team in both targets and receptions. He's rostered in 45, almost 46% of leagues. He's an RB2 if this volume continues. That's crazy volume.
Jordan Howard continued his raging streak of 3 carries for 1 yard.
But see, the frustrating part, though, is Gaskin
he's still currently on pace for 16 touchdowns this year.
Gaskin got a carry at like the 2, and he didn't make it. And then they took him out and put Howard in.
Yeah, and obviously I'm joking about that, but it obviously limits Gaskin's value if they're going to freaking put Jordan Howard in at the 1 yard line to vulture his touchdown every week. If Gaskin was going to get that goal line touch, then yeah, I think he's an RB2. But if he's not going to get the goal line touch, then I mean, is he? I don't know. The quantity's there. It's tough to go out and spend a bunch on him if he's available. But yeah, only because his upside's limited.
Yeah. So I don't know. He's a flex play for me. He's probably just going to be a flex play, maybe a volume based RB2. If he can continue to dominate the touches. What I think the more interesting pickup, Myles Gaskin is going to be season long value. My next player is not season long value. It's probably a 1, maybe 2 week rental. And that's Carlos Hyde. Chris Carson got his knee banged up by what's called a gator roll. I learned.
That was so stupid.
Yeah. And I want to name the player because this was the dirtiest play ever. Tristan Hill, number 72, defensive tackle for the Cowboys. I think he has a nice fine coming for him.
He's going to get destroyed next week.
Next week, nobody. He has a target on his back for sure. But Hyde is the next man up. Chris Carson went out. They're saying nothing's torn in his knee. However, obviously there was strain, so they're calling it a mild sprain. Said he could potentially be back this week. I think that they probably give him a week off. I don't know.
Yeah, Schefter tweeted earlier today, and I will quote this: "First degree knee sprain. He could be back soon, but they quote just have to see how it goes." So theoretically it's going to be at least a week, but Seahawks are notorious about being pretty quiet on injuries, so you probably won't know until closer to the. But I mean, what Travis Homer was in the mix a little bit too and got a couple carries. But we talked after week 1 about Hyde and Carson basically having the same amount of carries. So it would seem like Hyde is for sure the back there.
Yeah, and he's coming off he's coming off 1,000-yard season in Houston as well. He's only rostered in 10% of leagues. I think you'll have to spend some FAAB to get him. How much FAAB are you willing to spend on Carlos Hyde? Say you are the Chris Carson manager.
Maybe like 15%.
I was going to say 15 to 20%.
Myles Gaskin. To have the 1 week hit, I guess.
For Myles Gaskin for the season long value, how much FAAB would you be willing to spend on that?
30%.
I was going to say if you're the, like you, somebody that's rostering CMC and Raheem Mostert and you're missing both, I would probably spend that 30 to 40%. If you aren't, and he is a luxury, I would bid down on him just to see if you get lucky and hit on him, because you're in a league where people either don't bid or they're just very frugal with their FAAB. So it's all about need, right? And that's the one thing I think should keep reiterating over the course of the season is you don't want to spend all of your FAAB up front. You want to save some for postseason. Really only spend it if you need to. If you're coming out and you're 0-2, looking at 0-3 now, maybe you should spend some FAAB just to try and get some
0-3, looking at 0-4 for me. I just don't like. I've always prescribed with the FAAB to save it and wait till the end, but I'm starting to find myself now where I kind of can't wait.
You'll have to. Yeah.
So, and it kind of puts me in a weird spot just because I'm really not used to doing that, at least in our league. I don't. One thing that I'm usually hyper aware of is how much other people have, because I always want to try to have more than the like highest person, unless I happen to not be paying attention when a huge injury hits late in the season. I like to try to position myself to try to have the most FAAB when it gets to the last, let's say like week 11, but I might be forced to abandon that strategy a little bit now that I'm 0-3.
Yeah, I think, I've always tried to stay away from drafting unhealthy players, but I feel like that's just been cemented for me even more this season after drafting Debo, Cortland Sutton, and Kittle was healthy for a quarter or half a game. Just these injuries to start the season are really putting me in a hole. So just trying to get out of it. Speaking of that,
I was just gonna say one more other thing. I mean, Rashad Penny's still on the pup. So you don't have to worry about him coming back and taking Hyde's spot. Theoretically, he still has to be out the 6 weeks. He could be somebody that you could add for free if you have an IR slot and just kind of stash him. Just want to throw him on people's radars.
Absolutely. Not bad. My last running back that I'm interested in on waivers this week is Jeff Wilson Jr. And if you guys listened to our week 3 preview podcast, which we go through every Thursday, we go through all of the weekend's games, preview all of them, talk about all of the relevant fantasy players, and tell you what you should be looking for from a fantasy football perspective. I want to start doing some sit-start kind of questions too, so we might get into that. But if you listen to our week 3 preview podcast, we talked about preemptively picking up Jeff Wilson just because there was no way Shanahan was going to move to featuring Jerick McKinnon. And lo and behold, guess what? Jeff Wilson comes out and he rushes 12 times, albeit for 15 yards, does get a score, and then he caught all 3 targets for 54 yards and another score. Okay.
That'll play.
Yeah, 15 touches, two touchdowns. And then not only that, but Jerick McKinnon turns around and gets hurt. Hurts his ribs late in the fourth quarter against the Giants. He did not return to the game. However, they were up big late. So maybe that had to do with why he didn't come back to the game. I don't know how serious it is yet. However, if McKinnon misses time to heal up his ribs, then Wilson could be the number 2 this week when Mostert comes back, if he does in fact come back, and McKinnon isn't able to suit up. Or if they both sit, then it's freaking Hasty off of the practice squad and it's Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson is only rostered right now in about 14% of the leagues. So I think he I mean, in that offense, I think he's looking at least 15 touches. He's definitely, I would say, probably a 1 to 2 week rental. Maybe. I don't know how, depending on how serious the injury is to Jerick McKinnon. Hopefully he doesn't go get any rib injections from the San Diego Chargers doctors, but
LA Chargers.
Oh, LA, you're right. Sorry. Yeah. God, it's so hard to shake that.
Maybe you should have gone to San Diego. Would have been better off.
That team should have never left that city, but I digress.
I have Jeff Wilson in a league. He sat on the bench and then he dropped 20. Is like, okay.
Rough, man. It's so hard to start him.
Yeah, the running back carousel for the 49ers is so tough to play anybody. We even cautioned against starting Jerick McKinnon to a certain extent. I mean, we both called him a very solid RB2, but just didn't know how that was going to shake out. If Jerick McKinnon's out, then Jeff Wilson is probably a must start. I have a feeling they're probably going to try to get Mostert healthy. It sounds like Coleman's going to be out a while. I would try to go get Jeff Wilson for, somewhere in the 10 to 15% of FAAB range. Because again, he's a short-term.
I think you got to spend more than that to get him, though.
You might have to.
If you can get him for 10 to 15%, I think that's a good win because I think he's going to be productive for at least a week or two.
I would be hesitant to go more than that unless you are really thin at running back.
Yeah. And then we've been pounding this every week, but guys that are still available in too many leagues that shouldn't be. James Robinson needs to be on all rosters everywhere. Justin Jefferson is our next person. But oh man, I'm blanking right now.
Not Justin Jackson, my guy.
Your guy. I was looking for Josh Kelly. Although he did have a down week. Fumble.
Yeah, he lost a fumble.
Yeah, but still at 8 for 43. He lost his playing time there in the second half due to the fumble, and they were down. And yeah, I can't believe it.
Side note, I saw this on Twitter earlier, and I thought it was interesting. If you're playing in a Yahoo League, did you know that you can drop players that are on your team on Monday and pick somebody up that's playing Monday night, even though they already played on Sunday? So, like, as an example, I had Justin Gage on my team, so I could go and drop him. And if Darrell Henderson would have been available, I could have gone and picked him up and stashed a backup in case Clyde Edwards-Helaire got hurt. So there's like a little life hack for you if you play in a Yahoo League where you can drop a player that you might have dropped anyway and just go pick up a backup running back in case of injury. So there's a little tidbit for you going forward.
Yeah, it is funny. I did find that out actually this past weekend because a relative of mine was able to drop a player who had already played. And I helped him with a roster move, and I just couldn't believe that it actually happened. Because I would have loved to be able to do that on ESPN. However, not the case.
Sucks.
All right, we already spoiled it, but let's move on to some of these receivers that need to be picked up. This list is substantially longer than the running backs. Let's start with Justin Jefferson. Caught 7 of 9 targets for 175 yards and the first score of his career. Started over BC Johnson in the game. So BC's reign
also my guy
took all of 2 weeks before he loses it to the rookie Justin Jefferson. Looked phenomenal. He's only rostered in about a third of leagues. He's got to be picked up pretty much in all 12 team leagues or bigger. He's already, absolutely. Do you know what Stephon Diggs did in this role, even with the limited passing numbers? I feel for the Adam Thielen managers, though, because man, did that minimize his role this week.
You're just going to pick him up, though, and start him a week or two and then be like, why did I pick this guy up? That has this
9 targets a week. I'm not dropping him.
Kirk Cousins only threw 27 passes.
And the rookie got a third of them.
This is a classic guy that goes off for 1 week and everybody goes and blows everything that they have on a rookie. No rookie wide receivers ever do well. Just let it. For me, this is a classic. Let him have his 1 week and stay away from it, especially in that offense.
I'm picking him up. I think he's firmly supplanted BC Johnson for the number 2 role. And I think he's
actually
clearly
good at
the number
football.
2 wide receiver there. And I don't know
1A, 1B
when
situation, just like Thielen Diggs. I'm telling you, that's what it's going to be by the end of the season.
Okay. I'm not doing anything with this just because I don't trust their offense.
Our next receiver, Corey Davis, caught 5 of 6 targets for just about 70 yards in week 3 against the Vikings. Currently wide receiver 24, rostered in about 48% of leagues. I mean, AJ Brown, they're saying that his knee bruise per Schefter is pretty significant and he hasn't responded well to treatment and that he could be out for a couple more weeks to try to get right. So if you drafted AJ Brown, like RIP, man, that's just terrible. Just on top of all of these other injuries. But yeah, knee bruise not responding to treatment. What do you think about Corey Davis?
Scared for AJ Brown. Corey Davis is somebody that's already, I feel like, probably been picked up and dropped and picked up again in like everybody's league that they're listening to right now.
He's a wide receiver 2 right now.
Yeah, no, I know. He's tied for 21st in catches, 21st in catches, 21st in yards, only has 1 touchdown. I mean, I guess you have to pick him up. I don't know how much I'd spend on him because once AJ Brown comes back, I think he's right back to being probably not useful and probably being dropped. So for that reason, I'm not going out and trying to get a ton of FAAB to spend on him.
5 to 10%.
Max. I'm thinking he's like a 3 to 4%, maybe a little less than that. If somebody wants to go out and get him, that's fine. But yeah, I'm not as big on Tannehill as you are. But I think once AJ Brown comes back, then his value's negated.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would also add on that, as far as AJ Brown coming back, I think it will also have an effect on Jonnu Smith's value.
Mm-hmm.
So all you Jonnu Smith's own roster managers, I would be trying to trade high on that guy right now. I'd be talking to me, the guys that roster George Kittle, see if they're just want to get out from under the injury bug and maybe get somebody that's been consistent the first 3 weeks.
Yep.
Moving on, Tee Higgins was the 33rd pick in this year's draft. He caught 5 of 9 targets for 40 yards, 2 scores against the Philadelphia Eagles. He's only rostered in 7% of leagues. I think right now he's probably worth like an end of bench stash, excuse me.
Maybe.
He's second in targets on the team in week 3 and first in snaps. AJ Green, while being there, just hasn't been able to put it together for whatever reason. I mean, definitely concerned there, but if they decide to pull the trigger and get younger eventually, especially if they're like 0-7, 0-8, or I don't know. I mean, if they just keep losing, I wouldn't be surprised if they just try and put Tee Higgins in a more prominent role eventually. But
for the record, the Bengals tied. They did not lose. Just want that.
That should count as 2 losses. God.
Tyler Boyd showed up, which makes me happy as a Tyler Boyd over AJ Green truther before the season started. Tyler Boyd is by far and away the number 1 there going forward, I hope. When it comes to Tee Higgins, I think it's important to note that Joe Burrow is currently on pace to throw the most passes in NFL history through 3 weeks. And so for that reason, potentially the volume could be there, especially if AJ Green, I'm not saying they're going to bench AJ Green or they're just going to stop playing him. But if Tee Higgins does take over some more of the snaps and they're going to throw the most passes ever, then he might be playable.
Yeah, it's not even about benching AJ Green as much as it is like, calling plays where Higgins is the first or second read. It's just giving him more opportunities. And that's the biggest thing.
I think
fantasy.
the Bengals ran the most 3 wide sets last year in football too. And this is a disciple of McVay out in LA for the Rams, who the year before that ran the most 3 wide receiver sets in football. So it kind of seems like they're going to have 3 guys. And if Tee Higgins is the third one and taking, all the reps away from, Auden Tate, sorry. Then I think Tee Higgins should be playable, and or maybe they should line up Joe Mixon to actually give him the ball out in the slot, because they're not turning around and giving him the ball.
Joe Mixon, man.
Rough.
What an incredible, probably one of the bigger busts of the year so far. Just because like everybody else, like a ton of players have been knocked out from injury, but Joe Mixon hasn't. So you're starting him. You're just getting nothing out of that position and nothing out of that draft spot. Like, awful start to the year for Mixon.
Terrible.
So how much are you spending on Tee Higgins? 10%?
No more than 5. I don't think anybody's going to bid on him. I think in most leagues, people aren't even going to pay attention to him. So I think you can get away
people are paying attention to. That is what is currently the wide receiver 28 in fantasy football. He also goes by the Lizard King, also Allen Lazard, Iowa State University alum, the future NFL Hall of Fame Allen Lazard, caught 6 of 8 targets for 146 yards and a score. He also had another score taken away from him by the Saints defense, who was on top of his back. Devontae's status for week 4 is currently unknown, but he could be back. If he's back, I would say maybe stash Allen or throw him in at flex if you want to put in the wide receiver 28. He had an incredible week. Aaron Rodgers and him definitely, I think, have a little connection there. What do you think about picking up Allen Lazard?
He looked really good. This all comes down to Devontae Adams' health. As Aaron Rodgers affectionately refers to him as, if Tay is out for an extended period, then Allen Lazard is clearly the guy. Led the team with 8 targets on 30 pass attempts. Marquez Valdez-Scantling only had 4, 1 catch for 5 yards. Huge disappointment there, because I know a lot of people were starting him. It seems like Allen Lazard is the guy
Lazard's
going forward.
The guy, man.
Yeah, and Valdez-Scantling is the chuck it deep when Lazard and Adams are working underneath. So yeah, I don't know how much I would spend on him, because if and when Devontae Adams comes back, it seems like he was somewhat close to playing and looked fine on the sidelines. So I would be a little bit nervous about this, but Green Bay is currently 3-0. They want to get their guys healthy. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lazard's got one more big week in him.
Yeah, New Orleans deserved to lose that game after that awful call to put Taysom Hill in the game. Did you see that play?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's like, what are you doing? Although I will say again, and I mentioned this last week, if you're a Michael Thomas owner, I do think you have to be very concerned about Drew Brees' arm. I think you should try to trade him and see what you can get for him. If somebody's willing to give up Tyreek Hill for Michael Thomas or something similar to that, just go ahead and do it, because I don't trust Drew Brees' arm.
I get that. Moving on, our next receiver. Oh, and by the way, Allen Lazard, I don't know if I mentioned this, is only rostered in about 39% of leagues. So he's going to be available in many.
How much are you spending on Lazard?
Lazard, I would do 10%, because the extra upside if Devontae misses another game, I would do 10% of FAAB. Alshon Jeffery roster. I feel dirty when I say Alshon Jeffery should be picked up. He's rostered in only about 14% of leagues. He could make his return this week to help the Eagles just in time. Man, they just don't have any weapons. Deshaun Jackson got hurt. Jalen Reagor's out with the thumb. Goddard's hurt. It's Zach Ertz and Alshon if he goes out there. Last week, week 3 was the Greg Ward show, who is next in our waiver preview. Greg Ward caught 8 of 11 targets for 72 yards and a score. He also had a rushing attempt. I don't know why they're giving Greg Ward a rushing attempt, but hey, good for them. 16.5 fantasy points in half PPR, owned in 1/3 of 1% of all leagues. I mean, you got Rager with the thumb, Deshaun with the hammy, Alshon coming back with the foot injury. If none of those guys play, Greg Ward has to be like a flex play at worst, especially with Goddard. Like, somebody has to catch passes.
Maybe it's probably still Zach Ertz, especially now that Goddard's out. Although, how fun is this? I enjoy that Philadelphia fans are somewhat jealous of Bears fans because we got Nick and they're stuck with Wentz.
Really? There's actually jealous Philly fans?
Oh, yeah. They never wanted to let Foles go after he won the Super Bowl for them the year Wentz got hurt. And they have not been high on Wentz ever since. And Wentz has disappointed them at every turn. I don't know, other than Ertz and Miles Sanders at this point. Yeah, I think I would much rather have Alshon Jeffery than Greg Ward on my team going forward. I want to make that perfectly clear because I think
Alshon, any FAAB to get Alshon?
No, I don't think you have to.
$0 bid.
Yeah, I think you can go get him if he's available. I don't think people in your league will probably be paying attention that he's potentially coming back this week.
I would just spend a couple bucks in case you got somebody that puts $1 on him. You know,
okay,
just do one of those.
And stay away from Greg Ward.
Greg Ward is, to me, a $0 bid.
Yep, I agree.
And he's after like everybody else that we've talked about. So
I
if
agree.
for some reason all those guys have already been picked up, then okay, I'll settle for Greg Ward.
Yep.
Moving on. Back to the Niners. Brandon Aiyuk caught 5 of 8 targets for 70 yards. They also designed rushing plays for him, which I thought was interesting. He ran the ball 3 times for 31 yards and scored 18.5 fantasy points in half PPR. He's only rostered in about 16.5% of leagues. They're saying that Debo is most likely to be out at least one more week. He will practice this week and then come back next week. Okay. With that, I mean, they're making him involved. He's a high draft capital pick. I think he has skill.
Yep. And we talked about this early preseason too, but I just want to reiterate, I believe Brandon Aiyuk led all of college football in yards after the catch last year before he was drafted. He really fits the 49ers mold of a big, fast wide receiver that can get out on the edges, very similar to Debo. Him and Aiyuk are going to cause nightmares. And by the time you add Mostert back into the mix and you still got Jet flying around with McKinnon, it'll be really interesting to see what that offense looks a little later in the year. For now, when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, again, he's probably $1 or $2. I don't know if I would spend more than that on him.
I completely agree. I think the upside is definitely there. If they keep designing plays for him, specifically for him, then man, he has a lot of upside. I'm just, with Debo and Kittle coming back, you just worry about all these guys' usage and what's really going to happen to it.
Yeah, I would much rather have Aiyuk over Kendrick Bourne, if that's even a discussion that you're thinking about. Much rather have Aiyuk going forward.
Quarterback pickup, Jared Goff. He had a rough first week against the Cowboys, but since then has averaged 25 fantasy points per game. I personally would like to see his pass attempts come up a little bit. He's averaging right around 30 attempts a game. However, I guess you don't need to throw a whole ton of balls if you're completing 70% of your passes. He's continued to look good, just like he did at the end of the season. He's only rostered in about 1/3 of leagues. That offense, if they can do it against the Bills, they can do it against anybody, is what I would say.
Yes and no. I mean, the Bills got torched pretty good by Fitzpatrick the week before too, so the jury's kind of still out on their defense. They also got up big in that game and started playing back a little bit.
That's true. That really did help.
Yeah, so it's a little different once the Rams got some momentum. There was kind of no stopping him. I will apologize to Jared Goff. I am planning on starting him this week in a league where they have not scored a touchdown yet in the first 3 weeks. So chances are Jared Goff will not score any touchdowns this week. I'm just forewarning everybody, just giving you a heads up that he's probably not going to throw a touchdown. But again, with those weapons that he has with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Higbee, I do think that the upside is there. Going forward, he's probably a fringe QB1 the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would say that's fine. I would start him, depending on the matchup. But yeah, I think that he's definitely worth stashing, especially if you're having some QB issues.
Yeah, and one thing to notice, and I will get into this in a couple minutes here, but I mean, Seattle is giving up the most passing yards in the NFL. They're giving up 430 passing yards, which is 80 more than every other team. And Jared Goff gets to play them twice. So at least you have that where they're probably going to be able to air it out pretty good at least 2 games, including week 16 against Seattle is the juicy matchup there. So
is that home?
It is, I believe it. No, it's in Seattle.
There's no fans. It might as well be.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving on to some tight ends here. Their first up, we have Mo Alie-Cox. He is the tight end for the Indianapolis Colts. In a game where only 25 passes were thrown, Cox saw 3 targets, and he caught all 3 for 52 yards and a score.
Cracky.
He caught 5 of 6 targets last week for 111 yards, and he still produced with Jack Doyle back in the fold. So he's only rostered in 8% of leagues. If you're desperate at tight end, you keep throwing darts and missing. I've done nothing but throw darts and miss while I try to fill in for George Kittle. Has me looking elsewhere, shuffling through some tight ends. Mo Alie-Cox, I think, is a decent fill-in.
Do you want to talk about Dalton Schultz real quick? Because I know we're going to get there. And then, I don't know who you would prefer to pick up between Mo Alie-Cox, Dalton Schultz, and Jimmy Graham if they're all available. Just kind of talk through that real quick.
Yeah, that'd be good to help people prioritize the 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the quick synopsis on Dalton Schultz. He had 6 targets and caught 4 of them for 48 yards against the Seahawks. The week before, he absolutely went off for 9 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown, and he's rostered in about a quarter of all leagues. Man, if the Cowboys have to keep passing, I think Dalton Schultz is probably my number 1. It makes you really think about what Blake Jarwin could have done in that offense. I would probably go Schultz, Graham, Cox.
Yeah, I would go Graham, Schultz, Cox probably. And the only reason I have Graham ranked higher is because I know that the Bears are going to prioritize Jimmy Graham in the red zone. With Dalton Schultz, there's just a lot of mouths to feed there between Zeke and CeeDee Lamb and Cooper and Gallup, who finally showed up this week. And this whoever Wilson is for the Cowboys, who really balled out and nobody ever heard of him this week or before this week. So for that reason, I would go Jimmy Graham, Dalton Schultz second, Mo Alie-Cox, just because we don't know what the opportunities are going to look like going forward at the tight end position. Again, I would not probably spend more than a couple bucks on any of these guys.
No. Yeah, absolutely. I would. What would you spend the most on, Graham? Would you get to 5%?
No.
I
don't think you have to.
I don't think you have to either for any of these guys, because who knows if they're going to flop.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what I have for waivers. Is there
I just wanted to highlight something real quick before we wrap the show. So we talked a little bit before the beginning of the season about how to, what playoff schedules look like. We emphasized, hey, the Ravens have a really easy schedule. The Steelers have a really easy schedule. Look at their last 3 weeks. Oh my gosh, look at these teams sucked last year. I just wanted to highlight currently what the 5 worst passing defenses are and kind of, potentially a team to target. So the league average for passing yards a game is 249 passing yards. Currently, Seattle's giving up 430 passing yards a week. Is
that all?
180 more than average. So they've played some good offenses, but 430 yards is a lot, and they just had their high price safety go out with a groin pull that they gave up all the capital for. So I don't know if Seattle's secondary is going to be any better than it previously was, and they seem to kind of like letting Russ cook and letting both teams air it out a little bit this year, especially with Chris Carson going to be out maybe a week or two. I don't see Seattle's defense getting substantially better. Just real quick, week 14, New York Jets, you're not starting Sam. Week 15, it's at Washington. That doesn't matter either. But week 16, already talked about, it's home against the Rams. So Jared Goff could be a league winner for you. Second worst defense passing wise is Atlanta. 350 yards. They got lit up by Foles in the second half. They could have allowed 2 more touchdowns than they did. They got a little lucky. Atlanta's secondary has been brutal. They're beat up worse than anybody else, it seems like, from an injury standpoint in their secondary. Then rounding out the top 5, Minnesota, Denver, and Dallas. There's only one team that plays 2 of those top 5 or worst 5 defenses, and it's Tampa Bay. So maybe try to see
get some Tom.
Yeah, get some Tom. I'm not saying you need to load up on Gronk, who's a free agent. I think you can definitely let him sit. But Godwin was out. He's getting tested for a concussion, I believe, again this week. So that's rough. So maybe try to get him on the cheap, but Tampa Bay plays at Minnesota week 14 and home against Atlanta week 15. Week 16, in case you were curious, is against the Detroit Lions, who's currently the 13th ranked defense against the pass.
Do you want to talk about that Mike Evans line, though? 2 catches for 2 yards and 2 scores.
He's basically the wide receiver Jordan Howard.
It's unbelievable, man. Like, if you have Mike Evans, maybe you hold on to him for a week if Godwin sits. But, like, I would absolutely be trading him away with every power.
Really? I think the exact opposite. I think you should be trying to go out and get him just because of the at Minnesota, home against Atlanta week 15. If you can try to get him dirt cheap, I think you should try to do it. The pedigree's there.
Oh, yeah. The targets aren't, though.
No, but Tom's still figuring it out.
I don't even know what this offense is. Like, Gronk is a blocking tight end, evidently. And
yeah, they said that, but then he came out and I think caught a catch reel. I think he had 4 catches.
Did you see Gronk's post game?
No.
Oh my goodness. So the interviewer asked Gronk what he thought about his role in the offense. He goes, I'm a pass catching tight end. I had 4 catches, so I'm just lucky that I got those.
Oh man. All right. 5 worst rush defenses.
Rushing defenses too.
You misspoke there. He said I'm a pass blocking tight end.
Pass blocking tight end.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. I didn't want you to listen to that one tomorrow and be like, son of a bitch, why didn't you correct me? So you're welcome. All right. 5 worst rush defenses. The average on the ground giving up is 120 yards. Currently, Houston is giving up 188 yards.
Oh,
that's a lot. That's 50% more than average. Yeah. Their playoff schedule, week 14 at Chicago, David Montgomery stock. There you go. Week 15 at Indianapolis. I mean, Taylor's going to be a beast, I think, the rest of the way. I don't think you're going to be able to get him. Week 16, Cincinnati. Maybe there's hope for Joe Mixon. He might show up 1 week and it might be in the title game. Other teams that are listed currently in the bottom 5. Cincinnati is giving up 181. Wow. Detroit's 172. Tennessee, surprisingly, at 166 yards on the ground every week, and Las Vegas at 163. There are two teams that play two of the worst 5 run defenses currently. Green Bay plays Detroit week 14 and at Tennessee week 16. So
fire up Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, yes, but potentially, look at picking up a little, not necessarily right now, but a Jamal Williams type guy where in case Aaron Jones does go down, he would be a fantastic handcuff for you to have on your roster, because if Jones does go down and he can replace at least like 65% of whatever Aaron Jones is doing, he could potentially be a league winner. Also, Indianapolis faces 2 of the worst 5 run defenses currently. They face Las Vegas in week 14 and they're in Houston week 15. Should be noted that Indy plays the Pittsburgh Steelers week 16. So there's not a ton of Taylor value in the final potentially.
No. It's going to be so hard, if not impossible, to sit him then, though.
I know, but they're only giving up 54 rush yards a week.
God.
So it's like Taylor can get you to the finals, but he's going to have a tough time bringing the bacon home.
He's going to help a lot of people win leagues, I think.
Yeah. So he'll get you there, but it's going to be almost to the point where you're not going to be able to start him at the end.
Absolutely. That does it for our waivers. Alex, thank you. That's great. That, the best thing is about that too, though, is it as you come to the playoffs, I like to
it's all about the schedule.
I try to pivot.
The schedule.
Yeah. So if I can flip my RB2 for somebody else's RB2 that has a much more favorable playoff schedule, I'm making that trade, but I'm not making it at week like 11 or like at the trade deadline. I'm trying to make it like a week or 2 before, just so, people aren't
paying attention to it potentially.
They don't catch on as fast. So yeah, that's I think that wraps up our waiver wire show. I will say right now, our latest score update, it is Chiefs 27, Ravens 10. Man, this game is not going how I thought it was going to go. McCole Hardman with 3 for 74 and a score. Tyreek Hill 4 for 64 and a score. Pat Mahomes ran one in himself. I would say that Hardman is pick upable.
He's not going to be consistent enough.
Yeah. He's only rostered in 35% of leagues. So
that's still pretty high, actually.
I just wish the Ravens would make the pivot to Dobbins. That's all I want, but I don't think we're going to
seem like it's going to happen. Can we talk real quick about some Newsy stuff?
Yeah. What do you got? Here, hold on. Let me do the drop.
Newsy stuff.
All right. So I feel like I let the listeners down last week because you sprang like hey, do you have any good stripper stories? And I didn't think that was fair because of course I'm going to say no. And
are you recanting your no?
Well, no, maybe, but I'm just saying that it totally took me off guard. I was like, where in the world is this coming from? You pleaded the 5th. I'm actually so my cousin had a bachelor party and we were in Milwaukee and we were hanging out wherever. Full disclosure, not been in a strip club since I got married and several years before that. I think this is actually the last time. It was a long time ago. And so we're sitting around having some drinks and all of a sudden, like Terrell Owens walks in.
What?
And he was there in Milwaukee for the Pro Bowling Association tournament in Milwaukee.
I remember he bowled.
Yeah. And so we were sitting there and I'm like, it's freaking T.O.
Did you walk up to T.O.?
Well, so I let everybody know, like, dude, hey, T.O. is like sitting right here. And so the bachelor like tried to get at T.O. And security guards like came over and said like, dude, what are you doing? And he didn't get removed. He just got told to go back to our area. But yeah, Terrell Owens strip club. So there's your stripper story.
Wow.
Hey, man, must have been a nice little club if TO's heard about it. So,
yeah, strip clubs are stupid.
Oh, well, thank you for setting the record straight, Alex.
I just want our listeners to be able to trust what I'm saying. And so I feel bad about lying about anything. My fantasy analysis might suck, but I'm always going to be honest with you.
We are nothing without our morals. Oh, man. All right. On that note, we are going to flip it to our social media page. Thank you guys so much for listening. Good luck on the waiver wire this week. Please let us know who you get. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe on whatever platform you are listening on, watching on. Follow us on Twitter, all the social medias. We are at the FF Sackos everywhere. With that, have a good night.
Man, I'm going to hit that Green Bay, Kansas City money line. I need to put together a bet of the week for people.
I'm going to buy you a drink.
Ooh-wee-oo.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Football Sackos podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the FF Sackos.